watcher. This all happened when I was 19. I'm not the best looking dude, so I've never had much luck and ended up on Tinder. I wasn't having much luck there either until like the 3rd month of using it when a blonde woman named Katie messaged me. She was pretty enough that I just dismissed her as being a bot. It wasn't until 3 days later that she messaged me again, which was odd because bots almost never message more than once. I clicked on her chat and replied, then looked at her profile. What I saw was pretty generic, but definitely wasn't a bot's profile. We had been talking for about a month when she proposed the idea that I come see her. I was pretty reluctant as she lived hours away from me, but I had to admit, I really did like her quite a bit, and I had been thinking about asking her if I could come see her for a while now. After a bit more badgering from her, I finally said that I would take the drive to go see her. At this point, I had no reason to doubt she was who she said she was. We had video chatted every other week and called most days. I just assumed I got really lucky. Things did get a little weird on the way there though. She kept messaging me, asking me where I was and making sure I was still coming. At some points, when I took more than 30 minutes to respond, she sent me a slew of annoyed texts. Admittedly, I had chalked this all up to her being nervous about me coming to see her. I was pretty nervous too, so I couldn't blame her. I had a hard time finding the house at first. The directions she gave me were pretty confusing, and it was through a series of gravel and dirt roads in a large thicket of trees. It was still about midday when I came onto an odd-looking house. A window on the 2nd floor was boarded up, but it didn't look abandoned, just worse for wear. Katie's red buggy that she liked to talk about was parked in front of the garage. I picked up my phone and texted her that I was here. She only sent a smiley face in return. When I got out of my car to go knock on the door, I noticed someone was looking at me from one of the 2nd floor windows. I found it a little creepy, but figured it was just her father or something. She did tell me before that he comes to stay with her every now and then, so I ignored it and knocked on the door. She answered with a smile and even gave me a kiss, which surprised me, and I followed her inside. We sat down on the couch and started talking about our plans when I asked her about her dad. "You didn't tell me your dad was here," I said. "Was that going to be a surprise or?" Katie looked confused and told me that her dad wasn't here. I still thought she was keeping up the act, and I told her that she didn't have to keep pretending. I had already seen him looking at me through the upstairs window. Katie went pale and said that we had to get out of there now. We both ran to our cars, and when I questioned Katie, she informed me that her dad wasn't there and that she had been home alone until I showed up. I called the police, and while I was on the phone giving the address, Katie gasped and pointed to the window where I had seen the guy last. He was looking out at us through the window again. This time, I got a better look of him, and he seemed older and frail, almost like he hadn't eaten anything in a while. He then left the window after he saw that we saw him. The police took half an hour to show up, and the whole time Katie was crying and mumbling about how she was an idiot for not keeping her doors locked. When the police finally did show up, one started asking me and Katie questions, and the other two searched the house. They came back out a little later and told me and Katie that, while they didn't find anyone, they did find that the back door was wide open. Whoever it was had run out into the woods, but the cops were sure the house was empty. After the cops left, Katie asked me to stay the night because she was too scared to be in her house alone right now. I gladly did, and we slept downstairs on the couch, as Katie's bed was the room next to the one the man had been in. Katie had also brought out a shotgun that her father had given to her. I told her it was fine, the man's gone, but she insisted, saying she'd feel safer if we had it out, and I'm glad she did. Later that night, I was still wide awake watching TV. Katie had somehow managed to fall asleep. From the kitchen, I heard the sound of a doorknob being turned. At this point, I wasn't even scared, I was just annoyed and pissed. I flipped on the light in the kitchen and pointed the gun at the kitchen door, and there he was. The guy that had been in the house before was standing on the other side of the glass door, frozen. He looked shocked, and I'm glad we had locked that door. The man unfroze and yet again ran into the woods. I woke up Katie and told her what happened and called the police again. When they arrived, they did a sweep of the woods and found no one, just as they did before. They told Katie and me that it'd probably be a good idea to stay somewhere else for the night. Katie and I said our goodbyes, She was going to stay at her friend's house, and I was going to just head back home. I left a little after Katie did, and I was on the phone with my brother telling him about what just happened. My headlights were on. As I was talking, something caught my eye. That same fucking man was standing at the corner of the house just watching me. I gunned it out of there and didn't even bother calling the police again, but I did text Katie and she said she was going to call them later. Tinder delivery? This happened about 4 years ago. Cue young desperation leading me to Tinder. I was 19 and super lonely when I was on Tinder one night and met Trevor. Kinda decent looking blonde dude who was apparently a mailman. I don't know. That's what he said, and he had photos of him wearing USPS shirts on mail trucks and shit, so I'm pretty sure it was legit. We meet and he's like, "Damn, you're cute. Can I come over?" And I was drinking with my roommate, watching B-movie, so I said fuck it and invited him over. The movie ends, 3 hours pass, and he doesn't show up. My roommate and I just fall asleep on the couch. After getting a little bit of sleep, I wake up to the feeling of someone watching me. In case someone was there that shouldn't be, I decided to pretend to be asleep and kept my eyes shut to try to use my other senses to figure out who or what might be in the living room with us. Suddenly, I heard soft taps of someone's footsteps and felt a cold, cold hand caress the side of my face and heard the faintest shh. At this, I jolted straight up and said, "Who are you and what the fuck are you doing in my house?" I have PTSD and started swinging at the air while he was frantically running towards the door. My roommate just sat there silent while all this went down, but once he was out the door and I locked it like I wish we had in the first place, she just looked at me and screamed. Before he ran off, I was able to see his face in that postal service uniform. I didn't call the cops because they have never been helpful to me. But the next day, I called my local post office and they informed me no one named Trevor worked there. I'm not entirely convinced that he didn't work at a different location in a different city or used a fake name. All I knew was that he was within range on Tinder at some point for us to match. Tinder guy preys on van dweller. I lived in a van and traveled the country working seasonal jobs. When I would get somewhere new, I used to use Tinder to make new friends. I was in the Auburn, Washington area and had a few drinks at the bar hoping to meet locals. When I left the bar, it was dark. I was walking to my van when I heard somebody say my first and then full name. I lived 6 states over. Nobody but the guy who checked my ID would even know my last name. I turned around and saw this guy sitting on some bricks, smoking a cigarette. I say, "Yeah, that's me," without thinking. He said, "Hey, my name is Chris. We matched on Tinder." I stood with him and we talked. He said he lived right there and pointed to the door behind the bar that leads to the studios on the 2nd story. We hung out and had a drink or two. He invited me over for dinner and he cooked it in the community kitchen. I wasn't planning on going into his place, but I was talking about Magic the Gathering and he said he had some cards and was wondering if I wanted to check them out. I agreed. I looked through his cards and told him there was nothing I was interested in. He said it figures because they were given to him and he doesn't even play. The next day, I go to the local game store to play Magic the Gathering, and guess who walks in? He offers to go get drinks and I decline. I tell him I'll add him on Facebook and message him if I change my mind. He gives me his name and looks over my shoulder while I type it in on the app. His face pops up and I tap on his profile. Then I see it. We have numerous mutual friends. I don't live anywhere near here. I've been here for 3 days. Then I think, oh, I am friends with a lot of drag performers on Facebook. Maybe he is too. I add him and leave. Once in my van, I get on Tinder for the first time since getting there. I swipe and swipe and swipe. I pay the $4.99 to get more swipes, and swipe and swipe and swipe. I don't see him. Where is he, this Chris guy? 2 hours later, I find him. I open his profile and swipe right. Nothing happens. It doesn't say you've got a match or anything. Not only have we never matched, but he didn't even swipe on me. Was he trying to hide the profile? I felt like I kept seeing him that week. I didn't want it to cause me to change travel plans and leave early, but it started to freak me out. He would show up at the bar that I was at, or the game store when I was there, even though he told me he didn't play Magic. I started to get really uneasy, so I checked his Facebook profile again. All of the mutual friends were my close friends. My childhood friends, my family, my teachers, my co-workers. I couldn't handle it anymore and changed my entire winter plans just to get out of this situation. This is unrelated, but 3 weeks later, I read in the news that his apartment and the bar we met at had burned down.